What's up, trash talkers? Listen, it's impossible to fight, okay, if you don't know what you're fighting for. Does that make sense? Like, if you're in the dumps and you're struggling with mental health, things of that nature, it's going to continue tearing you down, all right? Because you're consistently trying to fight something, which is that demon, which is usually something from the past, right? Maybe that why needs to be fighting for your future. Let that be your why. Get the hell up and start fighting for your future. Stop fighting things that happened in the past. Easier said than done, right? Go seek help. It's okay not to be okay. A lot of people need to hear this. You are more of a warrior and a fighter if you stand up and say, hey, this has to stop. I need to go seek help. The stigma, everything has changed. It's okay not to be okay.
And so my honesty cap is dedicated to a little, we'll call it a public service announcement for civilians and other people in the military. There are a few people that you should always take their stories with a grain of salt. Vegans, CrossFitters, and special operations guys that tell you that they were special operations without being prompted. The first thing they say is, yeah, I used to be soft, right? The only unicorn in that entire group is like a special operations guy that was like a vegan and did CrossFit. That guy's probably going to stay quiet for a little bit longer because he's confused as what he should talk about first. And that's the only reason. Right? Anybody that says that they were soft without being prompted or without it being like a normal part of your communications is probably either an enabler or going to tell you a bunch of stuff that's not exactly true.
What's up, Trash Talkers? Hitting you up this morning with a special promo on how to dress when you are doing PT in civilians, but you want everybody to know you're an Army. This comes from the Buddy Beckwith fashion design of how to work out. So first, you can notice the RI panties. Not Ranger panties, but Ranger instructor panties. The green socks, the knee brace for the old guys. Don't forget the M frames. Now the shirt, don't wear the Trash Talk shirt while you're running. This is just for the promo. You want to put on like an 80-second shirt or like your favorite airborne shirt so everybody knows that you're a veteran. That's the most important thing. And you start with this stretch. Buddy Beckwith taught me this one. Ready to go.
This is the Veteran Trash Talk Hour, hosted by Nick, Dave, and Buddy. Real warriors making fun of other real warriors. Try to not get triggered.
What's up, Trash Talkers? What is up, Gruntworks Nation? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 19 of the Trash Talk Hour. Special guest today, our former Navy SEAL, Rob Sarver, and corporate lawyer Alex Genzier, authors of Warrior to Civilian. And Buddy is here, and Cliff disappeared again. Where's Cliff?
You got to let him in. He just sent a message. You got to let him in. I was about to message you and be like, hey.
He's having issues with the power in Italy, Cliff, huh?
Wow. We haven't lost power in months, and all of a sudden it goes out, comes on, goes out again, comes on, goes out again.
Pulling too much bandwidth. That's the problem.
Sucking it all.
It's a huge issue.
How's everybody doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get the chat going here. All right. Buddy, I guess today we're going to skip the conspiracy. I was going to talk about a little bit about the craziness that's going on, but I figured we'd save it because Nick really wanted to be a part of that. Nick is currently not here. He's been traveling a lot with work, and I think he's sick apparently now. So he couldn't make it today.
He's always been sick. A little bit sick.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He wanted me to cover it next Saturday.
I mean, you can see it on the promo. He looks sickly. You know what I mean? He looks like he needs some nutrients of some sort.
I thought it was
All
like
that beer he's drinking, right?
Not good. Not good. You can't. Well, a human can't live on scotch alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
You
That's
got to put
true.
some water in that shit sometimes.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure. For
that's
sure.
how you can't use it.
Absolutely. You got a good honesty cap for us today before we jump to the guests, buddy?
So, my honesty cap for today is it's a little bit of what we refer to as scientifical research that I've done. Scientifical is a word. You could look it up if you want. But it's some scientific research that I've done. And I've even got a graph. I'm going to show you the graph. Now, I'm going to tell you that the research hasn't been posted or proven, not in any medical journal, but you can definitely, when I start describing it, you're going to understand it. And you're going to be like, it makes sense. That has to be true. Now it's on the internet. So
It's true.
it's true regardless. So if you'll, I spent a lot of time on this chart. So let me make sure we get it where you can see it. All right. Can you guys, all right. You know what? I'll just turn that. There you go. There we go. Here we go. This is the chart, right? The bottom of the chart, you can't see it. That represents time, right? This side of the chart represents the amount of either common sense one has and or insanity one has. Now, the thing that makes this chart change is right is your exposure to sun, right? So if you're in a normal place where you get normal light and then dark and then normal light and dark and it changes seasons, you kind of ebb and flow. You get just basically the same amount of common sense. These are places like Tennessee, Colorado, stuff like that. Then you got this other line here. This represents places that have a lot of sun, Arizona, Nevada. See, as you go up in the amount of time, you lose common sense and you go to crazy, right? Now, there's another thing that exacerbates this.
Oh my God.
And that's when you've got sun, sand, and salt water. So we're talking your Californias, your Floridas, all the way up to crazy. Doesn't take a whole lot of time. And then you just flatline at crazy. You people are insane. The people in California, you're nuts. Arizona, basically nuts. Nevada, crazy. You get too much sun. You ever go to Phoenix? You go to anywhere. Go to LA. They got like sun and water. You go to Key West. Go to some places in Miami, anywhere in Florida where they got a lot of sun, a lot of salt water happening all at the same time. Look around you. Nutty people everywhere. They're fucking.
I feel like it's happy people, bro. Happy people.
Nope.
I love it.
Happy people don't sit on the beach and smoke crack out of a bush light can. Seen it. Never seen it in Tennessee. Definitely seen it in freaking Key West. 100%. Walk around LA. Those people are talking to walls. Yeah, it's not because they're crazy. It's because they've had overexposure to sun and salt water. You need to put U-Hauls and move those people inland at least 400 miles, somewhere where it gets dark at like a normal time. They get some rest. They don't get as much sun exposure. They live inside. That's my honesty cap, is that we need a U-Hauling people from LA to somewhere else. That's why these people, some of them have figured it out. That's why they're moving to Tennessee. Because they're like, well, we're crazy here. We need to get out. There's something in the air. It is. It's sun. It's UV rays and salt.
Interesting. Did you just come up with that, buddy?
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that when you go to places that are on the coast and get a lot of sun, people aren't insane.
I don't know. Anybody have anything on that?
I wonder where here in Napoli, Italy, where I'm at, because we get a lot of sun, a lot of salt. So am I getting too far up on the scale now? I got to go back.
I bet that if you stay there long enough, you're going to go nuts. You're going to be insane. You're going to start coming up with crazy ideas.
I feel like they're all happy in Napoli, Italy, though. Italians are just happy.
You're going to start doing things like letting all the brush around your house grow and then stop watering it and then light it on fire and then and then get upset when your house burns down and be like, I don't know what happened.
I heard it was
You're
the
insane.
smart meters on their house that was catching everything on fire around there. Do you guys see that report?
What's that?
Yeah, they required them to put the smart meters on their house, and they had videos of the smart meters catching on fire.
Oh, yeah, they're like literally exploding, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't know why they were doing that before the fire started. At least on a couple of houses, I don't know. It could just been
They also took this is going a different direction, but still
I know where you're going at with
kind of
this.
still goes. They did take a picture of a dude that the citizens arrested in L.A. It was trying to start a fire, and then they showed a picture. He's like an illegal alien or whatever, no big deal. But they show a picture of this dude, and they're like, his name is like Juan Marquez something Leyva. If this dude's Mexican, I am like 12 feet tall and some kind of Anunnaki. Like that dude, not like I got that he had tan skin, but that dude was definitely Arab, Jordanian or Saudi Arabian. He definitely, his last name definitely wasn't Leyva. I can tell you that.
Well, then you see ports of people driving down the road throwing gasoline out of their car, and the arsonists are just going crazy out there. I guess.
Yeah,
you know
why they went
what
crazy?
you said early on, buddy, about the crazy goes up if you're in the sun too long.
And I rest my case, Your Honor. Boom, there it is. Proven. They're not. It's not their fault. They're not trying to do it. It's the sun and the sand and the sea. It's the water. Crazy. Where crazy happens.
Crazy.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, off to you, Cliff.
And just like that, no more WAA.
Yeah. No more. Cliff, you have the honor to introduce our guests for today so we can get into this amazing book that these two wrote. And then we'll go from there, brother.
Yeah. So hi everybody. Hope you're doing okay. Sorry about the little blip out. If something happens and I leave again, I apologize. We do have rolling blackouts here from time to time in Italy. I'm here in Napoli, Italy. For those who don't know, I'm the mental health warrior. You can see my podcast on Mondays. But enough about me. We have two great guests on today, and they wrote a very powerful book that I think for a lot of people transitioning out of the military, we understand. And the title is so fitting. The field manuals and hero's journey, and that's something that we can relate to as you transition out of it. With Rob, who is a ex-Navy SEAL, right, Rob? You're out of service now, right?
Yes.
And
Do you call them former Navy SEAls, or like the Marines, where they just say, "I'm always a Marine"? Like, is that a thing? Do you say former Navy SEAL, or do you say Navy SEAL?
No, I've heard that. The former piece. Because I didn't get full 20, so I'm not retired.
Got it. Okay. Perfect.
Nice.
Sorry, Cliff.
Well, hey, I was Army Aviation, so
Always.
And of course, Alex, he's a corporate attorney. We won't hold that against him. But hey, guys, I appreciate you coming on. It says a lot, with what we do here with our mission to, bring, veterans like yourself, onto the fold to talk about something that's near and dear. And I know what it's like to write a book. I published a book about 2 years ago. And so I know what how much your heart and soul goes into that. And I don't want to go in about me talking about your book. I want you guys to talk about your book. But before we jump into that, won't you tell our audience a little bit about you guys, a little bit about your service, a little about how you guys met each other? And as you go through the book, I have written down some questions as I read the book. And I'll just jump in. And I just will note for people watching the podcast and for our guests, you will see us from time to time. We look down at our phones because we are corresponding with people on our social media.
Yep.
And so we're not being rude. We're not being anything. We are answering questions for people as they ask them. And sometimes if somebody says a question on my social media, which you guys can't see, I'll ask that question. Then I'll type in an answer for them. So if you do see that, please note we're not being rude. We're just responding to our fans out there that are watching the show at the time. So with that, I'll let you guys, Rob and Alex, you guys decide who's going to go first, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We really appreciate the time, especially on a Saturday. So I guess I'll kick things off with my background, just real brief. So I did 1 year at Virginia Military Institute, then I transferred to the Naval Academy. So I was on the 5-year plan. And then I was politely told from the Naval Academy to go out to Big Navy. I kind of lost my billet going into the SEAL teams. So went out to Hawaii for a couple of years on a surface ship, and then kind of found my way over to Buds in 07. Went through that and spent the rest of my time at SEAL Team 3, and I did one augmentation over at our Tier 1 unit. And then got out 2013, went to go work at Goldman Sachs through a veterans program at the time, and did about 2.5 years there, went back, did a master's. From there, I kind of went on entrepreneurship, failed first time, went back, did big corporate, did a couple other executive leadership positions within some companies. And then I met Alex about 5 years ago. We were working in private equity together. Alex was serving as the general counsel. I was a director in a credit shop. So, but before we transition into the books from the relationship, I'll let Alex give his background.
Thank you. And thanks for having us on your show. Buddy, all of your work on the chart was a perfect introduction to this entire discussion.
Thank you.
The weeks of our preparation time together are really paying off. Thank you.
Like I said, months on that thing.
So I never had the honor of serving. The short version is I have hoped that our work on this book and the result of the book and our mission that has come from it will be one portion of the way that I can make a contribution and serve those who have served, who've stood on the wall for us. Rob and I both have had a very personal devotion to veterans, and that was the genesis of our conversations. For Rob, he will never tell you this because of his modesty. Every year since he's gotten out, he has mentored 10 to 15 veterans. And for folks that know about what is involved in that, the time commitment, the thoughtfulness, the process, that has been an enormous commitment. For me, when my older son joined the military, wanted to join the military and wanted to get to the Naval Academy, it had dawned on me a couple of times that I had wanted to serve, and I never had that moment in my life for a bunch of reasons. But what I wanted on a very personal basis as a father was I wanted my older son to have something when he gets out. And that is because I believe, without sounding presumptuous, I hope to your audience or to you guys, I think he's going to be very serious. This is his calling. This is his mission. He wants to defend the country and serve those, protect those that cannot protect themselves. And this is inspiring. I'm inspired by both of my sons equally. But this mission started with wanting him to have some kind of a memo, because I think he'll be in for quite a while, and there's a pretty good chance I'm not walking the earth at that point. So I thought Rob and I would talk about it, and because we struck up a friendship at work. If you've been around the block, it doesn't take a heck of a long time to get to talking about things that really matter in life. And I think probably like you guys, the things that matter in life, you can count on one hand. And so this conversation was inspired by that for me on a deeply personal level, but then our mission became much bigger. And we thought, how do we do this? Is there a book out there? Is there a resource out there? And we did a lot of research. There's a lot of good books by and about veterans. There's no book that covers the waterfront that is a complete field manual for the topics that any veteran or spouse, and by the way, we count them both equally in this equation of what really counts, because spouses are the backbone of every veteran and the military. And so the short version is we thought we could make a contribution by doing something that was quite different. And that's how I come to this. Rob, you want to take it from there?
Sure, and I'll pick up from the memo that we started writing and drafting, and very soon we found ourselves sitting in front of General Stan McChrystal. We got introduced to him as we were walking him through this. We walked him through our idea to kind of synthesize all this information and take it down into a manual. I think Alex, you were the one that kind of brought up Homer's Odysseus and the hero's journey and this, and he kind of stopped us. He's like, guys, I don't do the touchy-feely, but you are hitting on something, because the hero's journey is the story for every veteran, right? And then completing that journey, one of great sacrifice, nobility, and purpose. It speaks to every one of us, especially the call to adventure, leaving the known world to this unknown universe. The trials, the tribulations, to going through some sort of death and rebirth of ourselves. That could be, finding manhood, going to combat, something like that, and coming back up through this atonement. But oftentimes when we come back from the unknown universe to the known, it's foggy, right? I use the fog of war, or Alex would talk about stepping off the abyss into the cliff. We're not whole yet. We're not able to finish the mission or finish the hero's journey. So, in speaking with that, with General McChrystal, he said, "Okay, you guys have something here, but if you don't make this practical, it's not going to be worth a damn." So I think we're probably about 9 months into this memo at that point, and then it started to formalize more and more as a book. But that set the tone for the next 4+ years to write this. So
yeah, that's a long time. I mean, that's pretty significant. I mean, I've heard of authors obviously that take that long, but you guys put a lot of effort into it. Like I said, I've read it. I haven't gone through the book completely yet. But one of the things I wanted to hit on is the amount of research that you guys did. If you could maybe discuss that. Maybe I'm jumping too fast, but just the amount of, because obviously it took a long time. You guys set up to 4 years. The amount of people that you interviewed from, I think that really stood out for me, from privates to colonels. If you guys could maybe hit on that aspect of the book.
Yeah, I'd love to start that, and Alex will pick up. But we just started with what was the organic network, right? Reaching out to friends, to family. You can introduce me to this person. It kind of grew from there, took a life of its own. But we also spent an enormous amount of time tracking down who we thought were the specialists. We felt we had to go speak with Bob Kaufman, a retired Navy captain who stood up NICO at Walter Reed, who's really been spearheading a lot of the psychedelics in the treatments over there. So we wanted to speak with him. The TBI, PTSD, physical injury, moral injury, depression, grief. We wanted to try to get to the best, and that takes time sometimes. If they weren't in our network, we had to rely on other folks. So we got lucky with our 2 combined networks that we were able to get to, we felt, was some of the best researchers and healers, meditation, and doctors out there. Alex,
There's been a lot of layers to it. I think what struck us both was the absolute sincerity and generosity of every veteran, every spouse, every expert we spoke to, who felt a devotion to helping us make a difference. It sounds like a cliche, but it was incredibly moving. And so that caused us to take this task, which was a 5-year project, as seriously as anything we've ever done. The result is, I think we've read certainly every book that's available, including ones that are out of publication in old dusty libraries and blogs and articles. And there's a lot of powerful stuff out there. We also felt that the way to tell the story and the way to make this not just practical, but come alive, was that the voices of veterans, and again, their spouses, was instrumental to tell the story. Because at the end of the day, storytelling is not just an ancient art about how we speak with each other and listen to each other. It is an essential way that veterans for thousands of years have found a way to reintegrate. And we felt that if we adopted that approach, the book would be better, the product would be better, it would honor veterans in a more sincere way. And so we interviewed several hundred people, including experts across each of the major topics of our book, which we can briefly summarize. Just for your audience, by the way, the title of the book, if you don't mind, is Warrior to Civilian, the Field Manual for the Hero's Journey. I would let your audience know with some sincerity, we're not making a dime off this book. That's the way publishing is, but this is our sense of duty and commitment. For folks that want to buy it, it's available, if you would like, on Amazon. And we have a website that includes the annexes of the book. But to get back to your question, this has been a 5-year mission that we wanted to be as complete as possible.
I've got a couple questions, but and I haven't at all. I haven't seen the book. Is it just or is it like you just consolidated like the resources, advice, different treatments for things, or what is the? I guess I understand the mission of the book, but what's the book kind of consist of? If you were gonna like a back page of the book,
Sure.
what would that be?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Thanks. So, kind of starting off the book, we did everything because everything in the military has a preparatory command. So that first chapter is nothing but 12 to 24 months out, taking that checklist where you should be at the 12-month mark, the 6 to 9 month mark, the 3-month mark. And so I try to look at it from several different, from unfortunately the guy that has to pick the book up and has to be out of the military in a month versus the individual who's got that 24 months to really methodically kind of go through this and get out. So it's nothing but that checklist that everything you and I got before for a training mission or deployment. So that's chapter 1. And then 2 is, strategically, we wanted people to understand that, hey, you're about to step into the world of emotions. And that's chapter 2. Everything you came from, coming out of this unknown universe back to this known world, all these emotions you're going to be feeling, because for the first time in your life, people are not going to be telling you what to do. And Alex spoke about the power of story, but we also wanted veterans to understand that through these emotions, they also have the power of choice, one, so they can go face these things and do that. But also, to your point, there's a lot of research in there from the physical injury, moral injury, PTSD, TBI, we break down. But Alex and I also, and much to, again, to Alex's credit, his background in Greek mythology, Greek history, so we wanted to give some ancient frameworks for folks to work through, to refine their purpose.
I like that.
And then, and that kind of leads into what was kind of going to be my second question. And I think Alex would probably be a fairly good person to answer this one. But, like we talked about Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? And how, and we're, paralleling that with a soldier going on deployment and being in the military. And what I've seen a lot is people tend to try to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So when Homer came back from the Odyssey, right, like he was different, and there were some things that were good, some things that were bad. And he's different from other people, not because he's changed physically, but because he's seen and experienced things that other people won't see. Some of those things for the good, some of them for the bad. And we have a way of looking at ourselves and measuring ourselves against civilians that haven't had the same life experiences and don't have the same worldview. And then we think, well, we're supposed to be like that, when the truth is we're never going to be like that again. And that's not a bad thing. It's you need people with a worldview and that can look at other people and say, hey man, there are some people that have never had a hot shower in their entire life, period. So like you should be grateful for what you have, make things better, whatever. But how do you, what is your advice to people to try to separate the positive traits that they've gotten from the military from maybe some of the more negative traits, and like the lack of patience with people that don't have the same worldview that they have?
About 20 hours worth of answers, buddy, to your question.
Yeah.
It is a.
Yeah, you've got. Let's cut it down to about 10 minutes.
I'll do it in 3. How about that? And then
We got time, gentlemen.
Yeah, that works.
We can go over the hour if needed.
So a couple things real quick. You ask a powerful question, and what I would say as the civilian part of Rob's and my unique partnership, which we'll touch on in a little bit, we are all the composite. We are all our own histories. Mm-hmm. And the idea of the hero's journey is not kind of classroom theory. It is an incredibly practical way to look at your own life. And if you look at your life as having learned these lessons, some of them extremely difficult and challenging, some lessons have been born of tremendous loss and sacrifice, including of pieces of yourself that you don't get back. Mm-hmm. And that is unfortunately the nature of life. And that is especially true for those that have served. more than most civilians, most people on my side can imagine. If you can make sense of this in a way where you view these things as, while there has been great suffering and great sacrifice, as things that have taught you and given you a chance to become bigger and stronger and better, the person you're meant to be, when you come back to civilian life, if you can combine that with coming back into civilian life, you have gifts that most people, most civilians, most members of the military that don't look at their lives in this way don't have. And these are gifts born of tremendous service and sacrifice. There is, from our Native American roots in this country in the military, there's an expression that warriors carry the scars of the battles of their life in defense of those who cannot protect themselves. And it's because of that service and that nobility that there's tremendous meaning in their lives. If you can think about your life in this way, there's a way to redeem those pieces of yourself and, frankly, find a way to lift up those around you, whether it's your family, your community, the country. Mm-hmm. What I would tell you, shifting on you, buddy, and putting it back to you just a little bit, and I'll speak very personally, what Rob and I found early on in our discussions was we had each been through from utterly different places. Rob grew up with his father in the military, moving constantly, his service, his combat, his return, my not having done those things. But mm-hmm. I've had some of my own losses and my own life journeys and challenges and failures and recovery. What we found was we viewed life identically. Same sense of what matters, the same values.
Values, yeah.
So we were able to unpack each other's experience and the research for our book in a way that demanded of ourselves that we explain the very basics. And what we found was a tremendous recognition of the humanity that is common in all of these life journeys. Civilians don't often think about it that way. If we civilians can reach out, and I don't mean thank you for your service on Veterans Day, catch you later, but have a meaningful discussion, an invitation to our brothers and sisters who served, we frankly allow them to reintegrate better. We see their humanity in a more enlarged way, and oftentimes they see us in a different way. It's a tremendous opportunity. So I went longer than you gave me time for.
Oh, you're fine.
But I'm challenging you in one sense, because actually, if the veteran and the civilian in our country can see this amazing opportunity, we're all better off.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And I feel like it, and this is my own personal kind of opinion on the deal, is that most of it is perception driven. And if you can change your perspective, and like you made it a point to refer to like your life experiences as gifts. So, and that's what they are, whether or not they're good or bad or indifferent. They form you into the person you are, and you can either look at those as negative or you can look at those as positive. But if most of the successful people that I've ever been around or found, especially high functioning successful people, have the ability of looking at things that may have been negative, whether it was starting a business that didn't work, or joining the military, failing a school, or having a problem in a school or whatever. They have the ability to look at those and push out all of the negative and pull in lessons learned so that they don't repeat those same negative things again, and they change themselves. But it's definitely a function of perspective as opposed to a function of being an optimist or a pessimist even.
Difficult moments happen for us, not to us.
True.
What matters is how we respond to them, how we grow and learn from them,
100%.
and become the people we have a chance to be. Well, let me add one thing about why we believe our book is so timely, and I'm probably interrupting any of your questions. But we're in a unique time in our country's history. We have more veterans alive today than ever before, about 22 million. Every year, there's 200 to 250,000 getting out. These are, and this is because of the end of our 20 years wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mhm.
These are enormous numbers. There's probably about 15 million spouses and family members. We all know the number of active duty folks. A good portion of them are thinking about these things.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a time of an enormous influx. And by the way, from a veteran's perspective, it's the perfect storm, because as these numbers go up, thinking about your beautiful chart, media coverage, public awareness, government awareness, including in the programs about how veterans transition out, the TAP programs, those things are all going down because we're not in a war. So there's less coverage. At the time veterans in our country needs it most, there's a decline in coverage and public attention and public concern and caring. This is one reason that we believe our book is timely.
Mm-hmm.
One of your next questions is going to be, why isn't the government doing this? And to add a little editorial, we love our country deeply. We're devoted to our government. These problems are too big for the government. So who has to step in? It's you and us. It's your listeners. And that's why this time is so crucial.
Well,
That's a really good point. I mean, that's one of the reasons we created this community, for our brothers and sisters, the Facebook groups and everything. It's for individuals to be able to come in here and speak the same language as we do, because sometimes you feel like that's the only person who understands you. Whether a civilian will try to understand you, of course, but you feel comfort in places like this. I wanted to hit on something that you were talking about, specifically in regards to all the individuals that you guys interviewed. If you had, and it was all the ranks, if you had to pick one common problem and put it on the scale, which is the biggest issue, whether it's the mental health getting out, whether it's finding employment, whether it's just lack of knowledge, like what to do. If you guys had to say there is one commonality between all ranks that was the highest, what would that be?
Rob, let me mention one word and I'll pass it to you.
Yeah.
Go
for it.
It's refinding purpose.
Love that. Okay.
I don't want to be technical, Alex, but that was definitely more than one word.
Cheers
Not
to
to be a
that.
grammar Nazi, but
Buddy, you can correct me all day long.
Purpose for sure. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
not having that purpose can lead to all kinds of other issues then, right? But go ahead.
What we found I think a great analogy was from Commander Kirk Cronin, a friend of ours who dedicated a lot of his time to helping us with the book and gave some feedback. But each of us in our respective communities in the military, we earned our black belt, right? We are the subject matter experts of where we work. When you step out of the military, you lose that. You have to go back to your white belt. And look, with all these soft skills that we have, we'll find another path to regain that black belt, but we need help. This is new terrain. And I think sometimes I don't think it's out of hubris, but I think it's out of, we just think we could just continue to carry the 50-pound rucksack around. And we've done the hard things before. So we can just keep doing the hard thing, even through new terrain that we know nothing about, and we'll be successful, but we're not. We have to go back and we have to learn the new terrain. We have to have a little humility in ourselves. We have to fix ourselves in order to do that. So to Alex's point, the refining purpose was the most common theme that we saw for folks. And the stats was it 44% of vets leave their first job first year one, 80% by year two.
Wow. That's significant.
Yeah. And I was part of the year two statistic.
it makes sense.
I jump in real quick. Of course, as I retired a little bit over 3 years ago during COVID, so all of my TAPs and classes like that were done online or not in person. But one thing that military members is, and I'm going to say this as a 34-year vet, is what you don't realize is a lot of times we're so used to military we get programmed, right? You go through annual training, you get suicide prevention training, you get whatever training, right? And you just do what you got to do to get through it. And sometimes I think with the TAP classes, we do the same thing, right? We're just trying to get a check in the block to move on to the next thing. And I think for a lot of military members, they miss out on so much because they're just trying to get to the end so quickly. And, one of the things, especially in the first chapter book, when you guys talk about the steps, is you can't skip the steps, because if you skip the steps, it's going to come back and haunt you, at some point in time as you're going through your life and through the change of your life. Now, I came out of the military as a suicide survivor with PTSD, with TBI, with a lot of things, messed up in my head. But even then, you can still find a repurpose in life. And I think sometimes for a lot of people, when they get out of the military, and Alex, you brought up a lot of great points, is when you're repurposing yourself, you don't know what to repurpose to. And sometimes I think you jump into things too quickly. And then that creates its own life stress and all the other things that go on. You guys probably saw this in your interviews. But I think it's also important, and I get asked this a lot, especially with my podcast, how do you make that adjustment? And I said, it's just like with anything, because, a lot of people didn't have a purpose when they joined the military other than to serve their country. They really didn't know what job they were going to do. They took a test, and that test told them what job they were going to do. Excuse me. Some of them liked it, some of them didn't. And then you repurpose your military career to go into a different career inside the military. And so they had to do that inside the military also, and you have to learn to do that outside. But also, I think, really it's important just to take that time to understand yourself and how you have changed, because I joined the military when I was 17, got out 34 years later. I'm a completely different person. And I think sometimes we forget that, whether you've been in for 5 years, 6 years, 2 years, you're not the same person when you get out. And that's hard. And so how will your book help somebody who is going and dealing with those things, as they come out and try to repurpose themselves?
Go ahead, Alex.
It's a profound question. What we're attempting to do in our book is provide a guide in a practical way for some of these things. So let me give you a couple of direct answers that are in our book. I think the first opportunity to refine purpose comes from healing, and that is healing yourself. I think one thing Rob has enlightened me about is in the military, the mantra is team, teammate, self, in that order. The self is subjugated. In the process of transitioning, which can happen before your last day, and this can be for decades, and we can tell you a story or two that are just incredibly moving from some Vietnam vets we spoke to. We spoke to veterans from World War II on, of every conflict in our country's history since then, with incredibly common themes. And one of them is that the ability to seek your own healing is your first purpose. That, frankly, gives you tools to help those around you. Having said that, there's no one size fits all on refinding purpose in your life. Everyone can have a different journey. For many, getting a job where they can have some kind of fit, where it's a culture that makes sense to them, where they can relate to others, mentors, veteran or non-veteran, and they can create something, that's very meaningful. If they can serve their families by doing that, that's very meaningful. Having said that, one theme in kind of a mosaic approach to refinding purpose, which General Petraeus really spoke about in a very personal and moving way, is that when you move from the military to civilian life, you may not have the same single purpose that dominates your sense of yourself. You may have to find it in different places, the mosaic. And a common theme of many veterans has been service to other veterans, to their communities. And these things add a lot of value. I think there's a very young old soul that said, service is a way of redeeming a part of yourself. And if you attempt to do that when you're least able to, when you're having the toughest day, you increase your chances at finding a piece of yourself again that is meaningful. So there's a lot of ways to do this. And we have some incredible stories we've collected, which we think will help veterans think about this. By the way, including those that have been out that are older than you guys. This is a book that is meant to recognize that the transition doesn't happen in a month after you get out. No. It can be a lifetime. And that's not negative. There can be in the way, Buddy, you were talking about all of your experiences forming who you are, the basis of finding tremendous fulfillment and joy and happiness. Again, no one size fits all, but these are some key elements that we have found. Rob, please add or subtract.
That was pretty well said. I don't know if I could add anything to that.
It's hard to follow up after that one, huh?
That's pretty good.
Well, it's hard, right? It's never bad things never happen when good things are going on, right? And so when the poop hits the fan, that's everything keeps happening time and time and time again. And I think, especially for people that are transitioning, especially with the way that you writ the book, as being a manual. And I apologize for messing up the title when I came back on. The power outage kind of screwed up things, but it's important to to realize there's always going to be hiccups and things that can maybe not always go, but at least with your guys' book, it gives you a place to start back to, right? I always talk about on my mental health warrior is, when you relapse or when you go back, it's not a negative thing. It just gives you a new starting point, and you know what not to do the next time. And sometimes I think we beat ourselves up too bad if we go and we try a different career and it doesn't work out, and you have to start something new. That's okay, and eventually you'll find what you want to do and what works for you. I mean, that's how it works.
Life happens after you make plans.
Yeah.
And one point real quick that Tom Satterley, who has been an inspiration to us and many others,
He's been on our show. Yep, him and his wife. Yep.
Yeah.
very, very powerful. The work they do
Absolutely.
is incredible. One point he makes that touches, Buddy, on your world is it is a sign of strength and courage to want to heal, and that is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wanting to become stronger. And Dave, for your fantastic intro to your podcast, it is a way to fight for your future.
Mm-hmm.
As a mental health, emotional, psychological, spiritual health matter, this takes courage.
Yep. I agree.
I think it's worth also pointing out, and I think that a lot of times, especially when we get out, we look at it like if we do A, B, and C, then we're cured or healed or whatever. And then like we have to do these things because when we were in the military, there are gates to everything. Like you do this, this, and this, and then this happens. You do this, this, and this, and that happens, right? And I think that a couple of things that you said made a lot of sense and are pretty profound, I guess, and are worth repeating anyway. But first of all, is it like it's finding your purpose is never a like you're walking along on an azimuth and then boom, there's your purpose. It's you can have more than one purpose. You have different priorities that pull you in different directions, and it's not a bad thing to you maybe, like you said, you don't find your purpose at work, but you find your purpose in your volunteer work, or you find your purpose in your hobby, or you find your purpose catching fish, whatever you're into. But to say that you have to get out and be passionate about what you're doing, like very few people are passionate about being garbage men, but we need garbage men. So they have to find their passion in something else, whether it's like building art out of trash or helping people out. That's how we have to look at it like a journey. And the other thing is that that you and both Cliff said is that it's not like we had all this purpose and drive and motivation, any of us, when we joined the military. Was it? I mean, we had the purpose and drive to want to do something that we had no real idea of what we were going to be doing, but we found that our purpose ended up being whatever the job was, and the people around us, that became the purpose. And then you get out and you're like, well, I should just be able to find my purpose. Well, you didn't find it before. You're probably not just going to luck up on it now. You actually try other things and search for it, and then maybe find what you're passionate and your purpose is. And a lot of times you don't even know that your purpose is your purpose until you look back on it and go, oh, That's why I was like supposed to be where I was when I was there. That makes sense now. You know what I mean? So I think that looking at finding your purpose as if it's a road sign that you're gonna luck into is it is it's a hard goal to have, and we say it all the time, like find your purpose or your purpose, and it's not finding it, it's the journey searching for it that is actually where fulfillment kind of lives, you know.
Agree.
Well said.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
I say smart stuff sometimes, guys.
You sometimes do say smart things, but
I went to Austin Peay State University, fellas.
I wanna transition the conversation a little bit to something that you guys do focus on as well, and I think it's something that's unforgotten. I mean, we joke around about it, is our military spouses, right? We joke around with the memes and stuff. Salute me when I'm at the gate. My husband's a captain or whatever. But let's be honest, they do go through a lot, right? Following their husbands around through the entire world. Not focusing on their own education, really not being able to have a steady job or actually focus on their goals. So what are some of the challenges that you guys see that they face, or what are some of the issues that you guys see, or maybe some advice you could give? Because obviously we do have a lot of military spouses that are watching the show as well.
Yeah, and I actually really want to comment real quick on how that chapter really came about and put us into focus. So we would review each chapter with friends, family, community, active duty members, retired, just to get test the thesis, get some feedback. And we gave this to a good friend of mine who lost both legs, first op in Afghanistan, 2009. Took the high ground and ended up being an IED field. And thank God it went low order, and they were able to tourniquet him, get him out of there. But so Dan Knausen, who's a phenomenal individual, who's gone on and won, I think, 6 Olympic medals, Paralympic medals. He read it and he's like, guys, this is great, but you do nothing for spouses and children. We're like, damn, he's right. So that set us on a path of probably an additional 9 months of doing research to what we could find. And we went out and we found the spouses and the significant others and interviewed them. And it's the same common themes. It's the loss of identity. It's the loss of community. Just the loss of could be the loss of the medical benefits or the access to the exchange or the commissary. Having to go re-find all of that. But Alex, one of my biggest takeaways, and Alex, I think yours too, was a lot of times there's a breakdown in communication within the family during the transition period that adds a tremendous more stress, because either the veteran or whoever coming off active duty, they just make the decisions like, well, I'm just going to take this job in this region, this industry, at this function, and this is the community we're going to be a part of, and there's just no discussion.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't work out, and that's the paycheck we've been depending on for our entire time. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But,
no. Alex,
I think you hit the nail on the head. Look, I think that we are trying to serve spouses because of the service they have done and they do. They are essential to our country and to our military. Every part of our book applies to the spouse and the family. So what does that mean to us? The lessons we've seen, learned in a very tough way. Prepare in advance. Treat this as a team sport. If a veteran has a spouse, whether married or not, this is a journey to do together, to plan together. Spouses should understand and anticipate that this will be a major life transition, not just for their veteran, but for themselves and their families. Plan in advance. Spend some time thinking about where you're going to live. If you have children, what their transition is like. And by the way, there was a 60 Minutes episode about a year ago on secondary PTSD among spouses and children of veterans. And,
interesting. Yeah.
And this is an overlooked issue that affects about 3.5 million people in our country.
Wow.
That needs to be anticipated and taken quite seriously. Rob mentioned when the veteran gets out, the impact on the relationship, on the marriage, whatever it is. I think that in terms of lessons that I feel I have tried to learn in my own life, investing in your relationship, in communication, is the only way. And it's a tragedy, but there's quite a bit written about this that when the veteran comes back, there's often a real risk to that relationship because there's not a planning for it or an anticipation of it. You find yourselves waking up in the kitchen having coffee the next day. You don't know what to do with each other, is what we've often heard. These things really deserve your time and investment, both by the spouse and the veteran. So what we try to do in this chapter is give a sense of the key issues to anticipate and some practical do's and don'ts, including from some very powerful marriage therapists. It's a critical issue. You know, I want to go back to one thing Buddy said before spouses, and we can keep on going. I think that, as Rob has pointed out many times, both in the military but in general, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And what that means to me, in light of Buddy, what you were talking about is, I've been very fortunate in my life, and I have found my way in my profession the way I have. But I wouldn't have got there without grandparents that did any job during the Depression and scraped together. And honestly, the fulfillment and the role that they performed for themselves, their family, their community, their country at that time is as meaningful as anything I've ever seen. And so when you talk about garbage people or janitors, there's a way to say this I think is genuine. There's a way to say it that may come off as snot-nosed and condescending, and I don't mean the second one. There is tremendous dignity in work of any kind.
Yeah, there's a whole reason that that Dirty Jobs is a successful show. You know, it highlights the fact that your purpose is not in the work. You're not your identity and your worth is not in what you're doing, whether you're you work on Wall Street or you work underneath Wall Street. None of it works if we're not all doing, like, pitching in and doing something. So
doing it to the best of our ability, because there's pride in any of these things.
And you're no less dignified in, cleaning out porta potties than you are doing anything else. You define your own, I guess, your own self-worth, and if somebody else thinks that it's, they're the ones that have an issue, not you.
100%. But let me tie it back to finish the spouses discussion that Dave initiated. What this means in this context is that the spouse has every right to expect that this transition is critical to them, and they have a lot at stake, and they have a lot to expect, and it really needs to be treated with that kind of dignity and that kind of respect.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like when we're retiring out of the military or we're getting out. A lot of times we use the word "I," like I'm getting out, I'm retiring, I'm this, I'm that, and the truth is that the change in lifestyle is not just ours; it's everyone's,
Our families and everybody around us. Yeah,
like I retired, my son and I, we lived together. He had to go through. It's different when dad's home every day. It's different when you've lived a life of knowing that your dad or your husband or your wife was deploying every 6 months, every 6 months or a year or whatever, and you had to kind of make sure that you could emotionally shut that off for that time being, and then do the reunification, and you kind of you got used to having to learn how everything was going again, and then not having to do that. And Rob talked about it at one point, or, well, actually, Alex, you talked about it for Rob. I think, well, Dave, myself, and Rob all grew up as military brats, and it there's an entirely different lifestyle that kids that grew up in the military have to go through that their peers in the civilian world don't have to go through. We don't meet people in kindergarten and then we're friends with them until we graduate from high school, and then later on you meet people maybe that you grew up with in kindergarten. You may see them until you're in the second or third grade, and then you don't see them again forever, or you see them 4 or 5 years down the road at a different base. and then the stability of not doing that is just as daunting as what other people see as the instability in moving all the time. You get good at being at making friends or being a chameleon, and you kind of lose who you are at some point, and then you have to find that again, when you do, when you retire or whatever. And for your wife has to do that, or your husband, and so do your kids. So you're not wrong. It's a complete holistic approach to your entire unit that's getting out.
Big time.
Yep.
I'm going to jump in this. Obviously, my wife and I are dual military. I was Army, she was Navy. We spent a lot of years apart. And so for us, it was never hard to live apart. For us, it was always hard to live together. And when I retired, I was at home alone with our oldest boy. There's 10 years difference between my two boys. One's in college now, and I have a 10-year-old. Now Dad's stay-at-home dad, right? I no longer go to work. And oh, by the way, Mom's living in Rhode Island and we're living in Virginia. And then we didn't reintegrate our households until 2.5 years later in Italy. And so for my 10-year-old, it's been a big transition. And now my wife's looking at retiring here in the next couple of years. And so we'll go through another transition of it. But, I'll go back to another point. I came to Italy less than a year ago. I don't speak Italian. Spent most of my time in Germany. But I work at a restaurant here right off base called Kinda, and I started working about 4 months ago in the kitchen as a chef. Don't call me a chef. I'm nothing of a chef. But that work is so humbling to me, and I get so much satisfaction out of standing there for 12 hours and not try to fuck something up, because Italians are extremely picky about their food. But it's also, to me, very satisfying to be able to do that, and I'm such an honor to work with all my coworkers there at Kinda. Now, it's difficult sometimes in the kitchen because they don't speak English and I speak very little Italian, but we figure out how to make it work. And so, it doesn't matter what you find in life after the military, it just has to bring you joy. And if it wasn't for my wife, I would work a hell of a lot more hours in that restaurant for no pay, because they don't pay me because I volunteer in there because I can't legally work in Italy. But it is some of the most satisfying work I think I've ever done in my whole entire life.
That's awesome, Cliff.
I always love that. I love watching your videos online and the stuff that you're doing, man. You just
But
immerse
they're
yourself
always
into
having
the
a good
culture.
time
It's
there,
amazing.
and
Yeah.
they work 120 hours a week. They get 1 week vacation, but they're happy all the time.
Well, their lunch breaks are a little longer too. They take off at like 11, and then the stores don't open up till 2 o'clock again.
But our restaurants not like that. So.
Yeah. I love the Italian lifestyle, man. It's great.
It is.
Well, hey guys, do you guys have any social media or any websites? Obviously, you guys mentioned earlier Amazon, but where can people link up with you, follow you, get more information on you? Throw out some of those social media things.
Yeah, we'd actually love if veterans have stories to tell. We'd love to hear their stories. You can find that on the website. That's heroes-journey.net. We can be reached through that website. We're both on Instagram, personally under our names, and then we have Heroes Forward is the Instagram underneath there. Facebook, I believe, is the same. Obviously, not on TikTok, but and I think that's probably it for the social media side. But then the book can be purchased on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It actually comes out next Tuesday, so this is timely.
Exciting.
Yeah, it comes out the 28th. Alex, did I forget anything? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Before Buddy does the AAR, any final words, anything you guys want to get off your chest? We obviously loved having you on. This was great, very informative. I look forward to reading the complete book and finishing it up. But I think this is very important, very much needed for our brothers and sisters that are, in that transition piece from getting out, warrior to civilian. I think it's very important. So, yeah, just anything you guys want to share?
Yeah, I think just one thing with our viewers, and I'll pass to Alex. But a lot of times if we could sum it up and leave it with one thing, that sometimes our greatest purpose comes from our deepest wounds. So if folks going out there going through some really tough times, just please remember that. So, but Alex?
Yeah, I'll take off from that. The transition leads to tremendous life opportunities, and like we've discussed, a chance for the opening of a new life and tremendous joy and fulfillment. But we also know that there can be very tough times, very dark times. Rob and I both have walked through that. And if I could leave your audience with one thing for folks that are having a tough day, I would say never give up. The sun always rises, and there are resources for veterans, most especially from fellow veterans. There are more resources. There are more therapies that didn't exist even a year ago. There's every reason to find hope and inspiration. And we know it can be a tough journey, but we hope that, and certainly we're there to be a part of helping and part of a solution. If we could leave folks with one thought, it would be never give up.
Absolutely. Love that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you guys for having us on. It's a
Thank you.
tremendous honor to be with you.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Buddy, what you got on the AAR, my friend?
All right. Well, so I already erased the chart. It was took a lot of research, but I memorized it, so I don't really need it like all the time. So I already erased my whiteboard. But if you're living on the coast and you get a lot of sun, you get a lot of salt water, you need to take a vacation every now and then to ground yourself. Not so much Tennessee, but like somewhere in the middle. Go to Kansas. Kansas is good. There's nothing there. You can go to Kansas,
Go to Missouri.
ground yourself, go to Missouri, Arkansas, great place. Don't come to Tennessee. Anyway, and kind of get your crazy brought down so that your common sense doesn't have to fight it so much. And then we had both Rob and Alex on, and they wrote a book called Warrior to Civilian. Basically a manual on transitioning out of the Army. Comes out next, or out of the military rather, comes out next week. And you said Barnes and Noble, Amazon, wherever books are sold. And if you're listening and you're also either transitioning or you're going to the transition classes, it's not hard to write an ICE comment and say, hey, there's a great book that you guys should buy for the people that are transitioning or in their either 24 or 12-month window, and just make the suggestion so that the military can buy it for their people. They got money. Anyway, the book it works for military members and for spouses and children of people that have been in the military, whether you were there for 4 years or 24 years or 34 years. You'll be able to find something in the book. Just just like anything else, takes a little bit of planning. So if you're 24 or 36 months out, start looking for resources to kind of find your path through transition, and it'll pay off dividends in the future down the road. So that was the AAR. That's what we talked about. Dave, you want to close this out?
Yeah, Cliff. According to the script, we did have a script. Cliff is supposed to close us out with some
My
mental
bad.
health.
Cliff, go ahead and close this out.
There's a script, buddy. You got to read the script.
Everybody knows I can barely read. So.
Hey, as being the mental health warrior, it's something that I talk about all the time on my podcast, and we brought up a lot of good points with repurposing and knowing that it's okay to have setbacks. But this time of year can be a rough time of year for everybody. And I was just on a phone with a veteran not too long ago. I was kind of stressed out because January's here and it's kind of a down month, and maybe you spend a little bit too much for Christmas. Maybe January, just for me, January's never been a very good month. Because after my suicide attempt, of course, I rolled right in January. But so it's just very important to if you did overspend, it's okay. You don't have to pay everything off immediately. Make yourself a little bit of budget. Maybe not go to Starbucks or something like that. You can do little things to make changes. Sometimes when we're in panic mode, we try to make too big of a changes, and that kind of sets us up for failure. So you know what? All that debt didn't happen overnight. It's not going to disappear overnight. And so whatever you're dealing with in the month of January and February, just take it slow, make a plan, and you'll get through it. And remember, we are brothers and sisters keepers. So, hey, take a moment, take a second, reach out. Let's talk to each other. Let's make sure we're all doing okay. And, we we're losing too many out there. And, the numbers are coming down. It's making an impact, and you're never alone. And if you think you're alone, get on Veterans Trash Talk Facebook page. I don't care what time it is. Somebody is on that page 24/7, and somebody will talk to you. There's always lists of resources out there, and it's very important. And if you are transitioning out, please take a look at the book. I know money can be tight, but let's just keep looking out for each other, and things will get better. With each day.
Hey, thanks again, everybody. For everybody that tuned in late, go make sure you check out VeteranTrashTalk.com. That has the links to all of our websites. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X. We're everywhere. Go subscribe, give us a like. We are shadow banned on YouTube, okay? So go watch the entire episode again to push us into the algorithm. If not, you can watch it on Facebook. We love you guys. We'll see you next Saturday. Out.